Hi, everyone. I am Jason Morgan, editor of Fleet Equipment, and welcome to Fleet Equipment Unscripted, the video interview series that connects you with the industry's top minds. Today, we're talking with Chris Stadler, product marketing manager of Volvo Trucks North America, responsible for regional haul. Chris, how are you doing? I see you're still at home, but we're all moving forward here and seeing how things are about to reopen. How's everything in your world?
Everything's good. Yeah, still working from home as well. Um, Adjusting as best I can. Growing my hair a little bit longer too. You've got a beard going on, so
That's
we
true.
try to keep at least clean shaven. But everything's going good. Adjust accordingly how things are presented to us.
Yeah, no, for sure. The barbershops and salons opening in Ohio last Friday was a big, like, that was the big news, right? The entire office was out. I don't have that problem, so I was okay, but I know that that's a big bullet point for a lot of people right now.
Yeah. We unfortunately North Carolina hadn't gone that far yet. I think that's maybe next week for that happens. So
Okay, we'll get on the waiting list for sure because I'm sure
yeah,
there
I
is
think
one
there's going
right
to be a waiting list for sure. You're right.
well, and you kind of mentioned adapting, being flexible. I think that goes into what we're talking about today of regional haul, right? Like we're seeing a lot of different activity in different applications. I know that I've personally spoken to fleets that have adapted their businesses to hauling different goods or just winning business, or if they're already in that regional haul, kind of staying on type of those cycles. So let's just kick it off here. Let's start with the basics, right? Just get a foundation here for the conversation of when we talk regional haul applications. What are the standout specs and options that are typically the go-to for those applications?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of businesses out there that are in the regional haul business or applications, and there's grocery haulers out there today. There's tankers, there's bulk haulers. The key question is, what is regional haul? I guess that's where you want to start off with is, do you fit in that regional haul market? And from us at Volvo, what we look at is what does define a regional haul application. See somebody, a driver that may be, I guess, in and out of the cab a little bit more, doing more deliveries in a time frame. Day cabs in particular, a work day truck, I should say, that's going out there and making deliveries constantly throughout the day, uh, getting in and out of the cab, backing up, maneuvering in different difficult situations, maybe because they're operating downtown into the cities, delivering their goods into tight areas that may require a lot of maneuvering, a lot of backing. Uh, Congested traffic. They're having to go into the cities to make their deliveries, dealing a lot more urban congestion. And so that's where we see the regional haul market typically operates. There is conditions where maybe they have to deliver beyond their hours of service, where they may need some comfort when it comes to sleeping environment, storage environment. Maybe even they go a few days out. Say, in particular, a bulk hauler might have a load where they pick up from the farm, and then they go out into the the milling company that's maybe 2 or 3 days away, but still within a region. So they go out 3 days and they come back. So that's how we define regional haul. So when it comes to the specs, then it gets into what are you doing? What applications are you involved in? How do you get that business if you're in something else today? Uh, Bulk haulers, they require certain specs because they have to follow bridge formulas. They have certain trailers that are certain lengths because they are compartmentalized, or they have a certain capacity that they hold in those trailers. So they have to make sure that they have the right wheelbase specification to support that length between the tractor and the trailer, the complete length. They also need to make sure that they have the right chassis equipment. In particular, like their frame rails, they may make sure they're in a bulk hauling business. They may want to make sure that they're long enough to handle uh, power takeoff equipment that might need to add let's say, for example, a blower on a bulk hauler that needs a blower to blow out the grain or the sugar or whatever's that they have in their trailer. And so they need to make sure they have enough space on their chassis to accommodate additional equipment if necessary, and tools that they might need. You see tankers today when they go to gas stations, they have to have hoses and connections and certain equipment to hook up to the trailers so they can unload their payload. So there's certain specifications that require when it comes to length of a trailer, where they're operating. You know, for let's say a grocery hauler, they may have to go into the distribution center, or they may start out at the distribution center, like one of some of these major grocery chains, like a Walmart, for example. And they get their goods, and then they go to every individual store throughout the cities or throughout their region to deliver those goods, and then get back to the distribution center to pick up again. So they got to make sure that they have probably the right fifth wheel position. Maybe they need to have, if they pick up different types of trailers, they may want to have a slider to accommodate the different size trailers that they pick up to deliver their goods. Give you an example, also out in California, you know, they have certain length requirements. So they may have to have a certain size tractor to accommodate a certain size trailer. And if they're using a reefer trailer, that's even adding an additional refrigeration onto the vehicle. So they have to make sure they have enough wheelbase, enough position spacing where they have swing clearance and also total length. They fall within the total length requirements in the state, or any type of regulations they may have to deal with. So the key thing is what operations are getting into. General freight's a little easier because you can accommodate a dry van. It's typically 48 feet, 53 feet. You got pup trailers, you got multiple pup trailers. So all these things have to take in consideration if when you put that spec together, that you have the right components to support that application.
Right, for sure. How much can I tailor that equipment to that situation? Let's say it's existing equipment, or if I'm moving in, you know, you mentioned the grocery operation, and if my primary business is dwindling right now, and I've won some contracts there, how much flexibility do I have in bringing some of that equipment and that spec to that application?
Again, it's probably where you start from. So let's say if you're in the general freight business, it's probably a lot easier to accommodate changes. If you look at that area as well, they typically have sliding fifth wheels to accommodate different size trailers, different positioning to distribute the load on the axle, so they don't overload their axle, so they can slide it forward and slide it back to accommodate the different types of payload that they may be carrying. I mean, if you look at regional haul today, probably typically what's out there is a gross combination weight of anywhere from 66,000 to 77,000 on an average basis. I mean, I've talked to a few customers, they probably average about 73,000 gross combination weight. But of course, how you load up that payload in the trailer can determine where you need to position. So if you have I guess, a sliding fifth wheel in there, then you have the capabilities to be more flexible, more versatile in what you can provide. Typically what you see in like a tanker, they pretty much marry their trailers to their tractors. So they don't take off the trailers as much. And they typically have a stationary fifth wheel that's positioned somewhat in the forward of the tandem of the drive axle. So the forward axle of the tandem, they sort of tend to put it closer to the top. So they put more weight on, because as they diminish that weight, it sort of lightens the weight off the front axle. Right. When it comes to general freight, it's more easier to adapt to maybe operations. And because if you're in general freight today, you have the flexibility, and if you have a sliding fifth wheel, you can maybe adjust that wheel to accommodate different types of trailers and different type of operations.
Right, for sure. I was just going to say that we talked with Ashley a couple weeks ago about AMT options as well, and all the different gearing and packages and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm guessing that there's probably a good amount of flexibility in there with newer trucks if you need to gear it to a new application, or make sure that, you know, especially stop-start functionality in regional haul versus kind of a long-haul general freight carrier.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the transmissions out there today, and especially, you know, for ours as well, is with the iShift, we can accommodate different applications with software updates. We can make changes to maybe somebody that's looking more fuel economy, to somebody that needs more power, or we even have what we call a general shift package that can accommodate an application like a tanker that keeps it from sloshing and having the jerk reaction that you would have because the gear pad, the software programs it to adjust to different types of conditions of operation. So from a powertrains perspective, the programming capabilities that we have with the engines and the transmissions now in today's industry makes it even more flexible for us to accommodate different types of applications and different types of regional haul operations.
Right, for sure. I was surprised about how flexible existing equipment can really be too. So I'll put that video in this post too. But talking to the experts about it really makes a lot more sense in terms of what, because it seems like magic. Like I don't know how you do this and get such a range of operation, but it's very cool.
I mean, if again, if you're going into certain conditions, you want what we see from a regional haul, I'd say, like I said, because their payload is their GCW is not as high, I would say they would probably typically operate around a lower horsepower range, and maybe even a smaller engine size. We have our D13s and D11s. I see a lot of regional hauls going with the D11s because they're not going into highway speeds. They're not going maybe across the Colorado Rockies, that kind of situation as much, or into high, mountain ranges as much. So they're operating within a certain area so that they may not need the full horsepower. So if you come in with your 455 horsepower engine, you can probably support that needs. Will you be as efficient? No, but if it's business, it's business, right? So you want to make sure, yeah, if you want to make sure you have the right powertrain to support that business. And I think with regional haul, you're not going to hit the heavy loads as much, or at least 80,000 pounds as often.
Right. And even tweaking the software spec can at least let you mitigate some of that efficiency if you're not geared toward it, for sure. On the go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, on the great thing about it with us, we've done a lot of research, we've done a lot of clinics, and we want to make sure when that driver, whether it's a male or female, comes into in the seat, that they're comfortable, they're ready to go, they're ready to operate the vehicle. You put all the controls in their hand, invisible inside of their operations. I think the great thing is more and more things are accommodating on the steering wheel, like we've done. We put switches in the right position as well for our vehicles. So whoever you are getting in that driver's seat, it's accommodating ready for them to operate. And I think that's key as well when it comes to regional haul, because they're going to deal with a lot of more ongoing things around them in terms of traffic, pedestrians, because where they're operating typically.
For sure. Yeah, a lot of the things that you mentioned at the top of the conversation related to that driver comfort, the ease of in and out of the vehicle, and the safety there. And I mean, I know drivers live it every day, but all of us are more aware of of what we touch after we get out of our car now, and what we, or our vehicle, when we touch getting back in. And if you have a regional haul application where you're getting in, whatever, 5, 6, 8, 10 times a day with deliveries, you want to make that as easy and safe for people as possible, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
On the service side now, so we're getting into these applications. We're talking regional haul. Duty cycles have changed, and duty cycles have even shifted quite a bit with, just what's going on now, hours of service, exemptions, a little bit of change in those regulations coming within the next quarter in terms of implementation, although they don't really affect the drive time. But if I'm shifting my duty cycles, or I'm getting into some of these regional haul applications, and I might not be as aware of what those service bullet points are or how they may differ from a general freight application, what do I need to keep an eye on, and what are some of the best practices there?
Well, I mean, I think it's paying attention to the mileage you're putting on the vehicle. Of course, if you're slip seating, or if you're 24/7, of course, it's going to put more miles on the vehicle. You take a tanker operation, they're probably trying to, especially when it comes to times when there's more travel out there. I know it's not happening now, but as if that starts to pick up again, they're running 24/7 to make sure all the gas stations have their fuel, and so that the mileage you have to pay attention to. It's not much more different than your long haul out there today, but you would see, maybe depending on your miles per gallon, we kind of classify maintenance intervals based on sometimes how much miles per gallon you're achieving. If you're achieving let's say, for example, above 6 miles per gallon, your intervals may be extended a little bit more out there. If you're going 5 miles per gallon, that means you're working the engine a little bit harder. Then it may require a more shorter interval of maintenance for that vehicle. So it all depends on how it's being operated. You may see from a regional perspective when it comes to service a little bit more tire wear because of where they're operating. Maybe tire scrub is happening more often because they're having to go downtown and maybe hitting a little bit more curbing because they have to take a tighter turn. So that kind of wear and tear. Brakes as well may be a little bit more preventive maintenance looking at because you're constantly having to put on the brakes because of traffic congestion and stuff like that. So those type of things from a chassis perspective, I would say might take a little bit more attention in that regards because of just how you're operating on a daily basis.
For sure. And you had made you had mentioned kind of the engine service intervals kind of adapting, and I believe that was maybe it was at ATA last year that announcement was made, kind of those shifting intervals and staying on top of that and communicating that to customers. Just that little bit of flexibility where if you're pushing out a service interval or you kind of feel like you wanted to keep your trucks on the road, that kind of allows you insight into whether that's probably a good idea or a bad idea, right? Is it good for the engine or should you bring it in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a condition, and I think you have to keep an eye on it. And I think the best thing to do is if you're running in this type of operating conditions, is maybe do a preventive maintenance. I mean, we all, as a driver myself, I have my commercial driver's license as well. You do your pre-trip inspection, you look at things, you check your brakes, you check your air, you check all these things. It doesn't take it's not harmful to do all that pre-trip inspection, get ready for your next road. And every driver does that today or should do that. And but when it comes to what's the timing of that interval service, then that's all based on how much mileage and how many hours you're putting on that vehicle when it comes to the lubrication, the oils that you have to change out, the filters that you have to replace. That's, like I said, we have some conditions. If you're running this certain type of miles per gallon, we recommend this. We all know that even driving a car today, we sometimes don't do it every 5,000 miles like it's recommended, or every 3,000 miles like it's recommended. And also with the technology of the oils, they're getting better. The syntheticness of the oils are making it longer through intervals, as we've also advertised in our product. But it's always good to keep an eye on things, I think, and do a preventive maintenance check around your vehicles as much as you can, especially if you're operating a lot of time. Like I said, a 24/7 type of operation, definitely you need to keep an eye on it.
Right. Or on the flip side, if your trucks haven't moved in a couple of weeks, I know my car has been in the garage for maybe 4 or 5.
Sure.
So if you need to come out, I mean, just having that flexibility is great. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you taking time. It's been great to catch up. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Sounds good, Jason. Thank you.
Take care.